On today's Shane Scoop, we are going to be interviewing Jim Robeson. He is the Medicare answer guy. And I've known Jim for a number of years. And I'm excited to talk about this topic today because I know there's a lot of questions that come up around Medicare, what the benefits are of Medicare, who should be getting Medicare. So thanks, Jim, for joining us today.
Thank you, Shane. I love having the opportunity to provide solutions for the millions of people who enroll in Medicare every year, especially here in California.
Great, great. Well, let's start off with just talking a little bit about yourself. Tell me, how long have you been helping people with their Medicare health plans?
Well, I started in the insurance business over 45 years ago, but in the last 10 years, I've specialized in Medicare. And that was because about 10 years ago, I turned 65. And even though I was in the insurance business, Medicare to me was very confusing. So I actually had a friend of mine who is a broker that explained it to me, and he made Medicare easy. And so the light went on, and I felt, you know what, everybody turns 65. And if you've worked at least 10 years, you're going to be eligible. So I think I'm going to redirect. So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I've been helping as many people as I can navigate the Medicare maze. And that's what it is, a maze.
I think anything that is put out there by the government becomes that much more complicated to try to figure out how it works. And I think so many people have heard the terminology of Medicare. They know that it's something they need to get at some point in time, but maybe give us a brief overview of what Medicare is and how it works.
Well, I really like to look at it as in three phases. The first phase is when you're new to Medicare, you turn 65. The second phase could be you're turning 65 and you're eligible, but you're still working for a large employer. And then the third phase would be somebody who has been on Medicare for a number of years. And so when I talk to people, they're in one of those three phases. How it works is if you take the first phase, usually you know that you're going to be eligible for Medicare is because you start receiving in the mail literally bucketfuls of information from insurance companies, not so much the government, but insurance companies. And so, again, depending on if you're still working, you need to find somebody to help you kind of navigate all of that. And that's probably the most difficult part, is navigating and enrolling in the government plan called Original Medicare. That's where I spend most of my time. I do have a lot of people who I contact me first, and they're still working, so I stay in touch with them by sending out my Medicare newsletter. And then every year during open enrollment, which is coming up in a couple of months, people have an opportunity to review their plans, change their plans. So pretty much all year long, I'm busy with either one or many of those phases.
Okay. And so how many individuals are really enrolling in Medicare each year?
Well, the statistics say, or surveys say, about 10,000 people a day across the United States enroll in Medicare. And right now there's about 63 million people on Medicare. In the next 10 years, it's going to over 80 million. And the reason I mention that to everybody that I talk to is Medicare is confusing. It's always changing, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And most people don't understand it. So it gets very busy at times. And what I try to do is, as I've mentioned before, we try to make Medicare easy. You know, because I'm on Medicare, I've heard most of the questions. I've looked at most of the answers. And so we try to provide solutions instead of selling product. We provide solutions, and everybody has a different story.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I spend most of my time, trying to understand their story and what they're trying to accomplish.
And tell me, I mean, as far as Medicare goes, does that take place of your normal? If you have an insurance policy and you turn 65, do you get rid of your insurance policy and take Medicare? Give me just a little more background as far as what Medicare replaces and what benefits it gives you.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Shane, because that's where it gets kind of confusing. So let's take somebody who's turning 65. They're on a, let's say, an individual health plan, and they decide they're not going to work anymore. The first thing they need to do 90 days before they turn 65 is to enroll in the government plan called Original Medicare. And that's the hardest part. It takes 4 to 6 weeks, and you get your little red, white, and blue card. And they usually give you the first of the month of your birthday month. So my birthday is in December. So when I enrolled in Medicare, the government plan, my effective date, there's two parts. Part A is the hospital, part B is the doctors, everything outside the hospital. My effective date was December 1st. So what I did is I transitioned off of my individual health plan onto Original Medicare, the government plan, and then I supplemented the government plan with a Medicare health plan at that time. So you want to make sure that you don't wait until your birthday month to start this whole process, because then you find yourself past your effective date. And in some cases, your individual health plan will triple in price, or they'll just cancel you. So the important thing is, as soon as you know, you start receiving this information from insurance companies, we would be happy to answer any questions and help you transition to Medicare.
Okay. So what are some common misconceptions and mistakes that people make when they're looking to get Medicare, or just about Medicare in general?
Well, there's a number, but I would say the top three, and the first one is enrolling late in Medicare. And as I mentioned before, if you're in that first phase and you're not going to work anymore, you have 90 days before your birthday, the month of your birthday, and 90 days after your birthday to enroll in the government plan. If you miss that 7-month period, then you're probably going to pay a late enrollment fee. And that late enrollment fee is 10% of whatever your Part B premium is. And the minimum premium is $165. So if I miss the first year, it's going to be $16 a month for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And so $16 a month isn't a whole lot, but over the rest of my life, it can be very expensive.
Yeah.
The other mistake or misconception, I would call it a mistake, is you picked the wrong Medicare plan. So once you get your red, white, and blue card, then we look at all the different options. And like I said, we provide solutions, we don't sell products. So the biggest problem today in the Medicare world is when a senior sits in front of a TV and wants to call Joe Namath or Jimmy Walker and talk to somebody they don't know, really don't know their situation, and get sold a product.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened to some of my clients, unfortunately, over the last couple of years. So we've kind of had to unwind that. And then the last myth would be Medicare is very expensive. Well, not really. The expenses are, you're going to pay a Part B premium to the government when you enroll. And depending on your income, it can be expensive. But for the typical person, currently the minimum premium is like $165. And then the premium for a Medicare supplement plan would be a very modest, $150, $160 a month. Or in many cases, a Medicare Advantage HMO plan has a zero premium. And so, number one, it's not as expensive as the plan that you're on when you're 65. Those premiums can go as high as $2,000 a month, just the premium.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had a number of occasions when I've shared this, And people at the kitchen table actually broke down and cried because they were so fearful that it was going to be so expensive. So it's really not that expensive. And so that's one of the things we talk about.
Okay. And tell me, you talk about Part A, Part B, supplemental. I've heard the term supplemental. I think when you're driving around, you hear it on the radio, supplemental plans. What is a supplemental plan? What does that cover?
Well, let's start with the government plan. The government plan has two parts. Part A is the hospital, Part B is the doctor. And once you get on the Medicare or the government plan, let's assume you do nothing as far as a individual Medicare health plan, and you go in the hospital. If the bill in the hospital is $100,000, Medicare pays 80%, and you're responsible for 20%. And so if you don't have a Medicare health plan and the bill is $100,000, you could pay $20,000. And if it's higher than that, it gets more expensive. So a Medicare supplement plan is exactly that. It supplements that 20% responsibility that you have 100%. So if you enroll in a Medicare supplement plan and you go in the hospital, Medicare is going to pay 80% and your insurance company is going to pay your 20% and you don't pay anything. We call that a Cadillac plan.
Right.
That's the ultimate.
Okay.
The Medicare, go ahead.
So the supplemental plans, those are the individual ones that clients that would come to you could choose which type they want, and there's different companies that offer it.
Correct. They're sold by insurance companies. They're not sold by the government.
Okay.
And so an individual can deal directly with the insurance company, which I wouldn't recommend, or they can deal with a broker like myself.
Okay.
So
now, what about, I hear the plans that cover your medication? Is that something separate?
if you enroll in a Medicare supplement plan, you do have to enroll in a standalone drug plan. And there's like 35 of them. So we go the extra mile to research and find the best one for our clients. So really you would have two plans in that scenario. If you chose a Medicare Advantage HMO plan, that includes prescription drug coverage. And for many of the plans in San Diego and actually in California, those plans have a zero premium. The reason they have a zero premium is because it's subsidized by the government. And so again, depending on your situation, what your goals are. Some people, they want to be able to go to any doctor, any hospital, any clinic, anywhere in the United States without a referral. That would be a supplement plan. If they're healthy and they're staying in a certain area, probably for the next 10 or 15 years, and maybe they have some financial constraints, then maybe a Medicare Advantage HMO plan that has a zero premium works for them. So we do the homework up front to kind of bring them to the point where they can make that decision.
Okay. And I know with just looking at the insurance policies through my employer, how complicated that is to try to figure out which one's the best one, and the premiums and the cost that we're going to have to cover and what is covered. And so when you get into what you're talking about, where you've got multiple different parts, and then you just said there's 30 different parts to the the coverage for your medication, that can be very confusing, right? And especially as a senior, trying to figure out what's going to be best for you in the future.
I can say this from experience that in the Medicare world, the prescription drug coverage is the most complicated, because in the Medicare world, prescription drugs are not regulated. And what that means, if I have 5 medications, I can take it to 5 different pharmacies and get 5 different prices. And then 2 months later, I can go to those same pharmacies and the prices will change. And so depending on the type of meds that you take, the cost can be minimal or it gets very expensive. So that's why I like to view myself as an advocate. I tell my clients, if you have any questions, don't call Medicare, don't call Social Security, don't even call your insurance company, call me. I know your situation. And if we need to call the insurance company, we'll do it together.
Well, so I can already see some of the benefit of working with someone like yourself going through this process, but give me an idea of what some of the other benefits might be with working with someone like you, whether you're new to Medicare or you're already on it and you're needing to make some changes.
Well, my experience is, especially for those that have been on Medicare for a number of years, I would say a good 50% don't have brokers. And because Medicare is confusing, and because every single year the insurance company can change your plan, and you don't spend a whole lot of time, reviewing all of this, very few people do, working with a broker like me that specializes in it and is already on Medicare, I'm just 10 steps ahead of my clients.
Mhm.
So I try to educate them a little bit, not a whole lot. But again, communication is really important. I've had clients call Medicare, Social Security, and the insurance company, and they call me at the end. I said, well, gosh, I could answer that in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's important to have a broker who is an advocate and can walk alongside of that, alongside of you. And like I said, every year, your plan can change, especially your prescription drug plan, because it's not regulated. And so I work really hard to communicate with my clients and let them know that beginning in September, every year, you're going to get a letter from the insurance company. It's called Annual Notice of Change. You need to read that. I don't get a copy.
Right.
And if you don't read it, and all of a sudden in January, February, March, your prescription drug plan premium went up by double or triple, and your prescription drugs aren't on the formulary anymore, or they're too expensive, we could have had that conversation months before and maybe changed it.
Right.
So yeah, it's really important to have a broker who is available, accessible, and can find an answer and a solution to your question.
Sure. Well, and people who work with me with Team Slater, I mean, we're all about education. That's really important to us, being an advocate for our clients. So that's why we like to team up with other professionals like yourself who give that same service and are going to be able to, help our clients get to where they need to be, make the wise decisions, and just have great, customer care. So tell me, how often can a Medicare plan be changed? How often? I mean, you mentioned that the prescription plan can change yearly. Tell me a little bit about that, and then when open enrollment is.
Yeah, so once you go on Medicare, depending on the type of plan that you're on, so let's say you're on a Medicare supplement plan, you're probably not going to change your Medicare supplement plan. And here's why. It doesn't really change that much. Now, the premium goes up every year, not by much, but the very characteristic and nature of it is you can go anywhere you want to, and you can see any doctor you want to. What does change is your standalone prescription drug plan. And so every year from October 15th to December 7th, it's called Annual Enrollment Period. That's when you can change your drug plan. And I recommend that if you haven't looked at your drug plan for at least a couple of years, you should do that. Now, if you have a Medicare Advantage HMO plan, you can change your plan. Now, why would somebody want to change their plan, their Medicare Advantage plan? Their doctor retired, they're not happy with the insurance company, they've had their Medicare Advantage plan for 5, 6, 7, 10 years in some cases. And every year, every couple of years, insurance companies add new benefits. Well, if I was enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan 8, 9 years ago, and there are 2 or 3, 4 different plans, newer plans with newer benefits, I probably would want to know that. So that's during annual enrollment period. January, February, and March, you have one more opportunity to change your Medicare Advantage plan. Some people change it during the 3 months before, and they go, oh, I made a mistake. So they can do it one more time.
Okay. That's great to know. We hear so much out there on the news about Medicare, Social Security, what's happening with spending. what do you see as far as the future is for Medicare?
Well, I can say this, that unfortunately, the Congress is kicking the Medicare and the Social Security can down the road, and they've been doing it for many, many years. And I'm sure we've heard statistics that in the next 5 or 10 years, they're going to run out of money. Well, I don't think that'll happen. It's like anything else. You just wait and wait and wait, and finally we got to do something. They're probably going to push out my guess, the Social Security retirement age from 65 to 66 or 67. They may raise the taxes a little bit. The same with Medicare. They're always changing the plans, but they change deductibles. Insurance companies change co-pays. So it's very fluid. And again, it's important to work with a broker who stays on top of it so they can give you a heads up as to ways to save money and keep your doctor and get extra benefits. So I don't really have a crystal ball, but they probably have to do something sooner than later in order to keep it all in place.
Well, one of the things obviously that we hear about all the time, and we're seeing with just inflation in general, is the cost for medical care going up, prescriptions going up, all of this different stuff. So, what are some of the estimates that you're seeing out there as far as the costs are concerned?
That's a great question, Shane. Studies have shown that for the average senior, I am one, so I can call it that from 65 to life expectancy, which would be the late 70s, early 80s, your total Medicare expenses could exceed $250,000 to $300,000.
Wow.
Now, that could be made up of premiums and deductibles and copays, but I think the largest part of that is when someone gets sick and can't do the daily activities. And unfortunately, the percentage of those people runs about 60 or 70%. As much as I don't want to think about it, it's possible. And so those costs could run $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month. Whether you go in a nursing home, because Medicare doesn't cover nursing homes. Social Security doesn't cover nursing homes. So that's going to be a true cost that comes out of your pocket. Or if you have somebody to come in your home, it's a little less expensive, but it's still going to be several $1,000s a month. And it may be for 6 months, 12 months, 18, 2 years, 3 years. We really don't know. So that's something that financial planners are aware of. I know that part of what you do is to provide financial options for those that own homes, but it can get expensive. So it's important to have a good Medicare plan that fits your needs, but you need to be aware that some things, especially caring for yourself, if you can't do the basic daily activities, that gets real expensive and can drain your finances pretty quickly.
And those are things that you really need to plan ahead for, those additional expenses, because if you wait until you need it, it's going to be too late. It's going to be very difficult to be able to cover the cost, put plans in place. If you're already having issues where you're sick, you're not going to be able to be making those decisions. So really, the earlier you plan that out, with whatever solutions you come up with, the best. We also know that people are living longer. They're living until older ages. So that's going to increase the cost of care over time. And we know that just everything involved in the medical field is getting more expensive as well, especially as more and more technology and science come out as well.
Absolutely. And this is where a financial planner advisor comes in, working with other financial advisors, such as yourself and myself, because once you get sick, everything else kind of goes away. And all you want to do is focus on getting better, but the bills can keep coming in. So I really appreciate being on this question and answer.
Yeah.
webinar that you put on.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jim. And tell us, I mean, if anyone wants to reach out to you, get a little more information about what it is that you do, what's the best way to reach you?
You can call me at 858-935-9120. And our receptionist has my calendar. I do Zoom calls. I also do personal appointments, or you can email me at jim@themedicareanswerguy, GUY.com, or you can go to my website, www.themedicareanswerguy.com, and see some of the information I have there. And there's a place to schedule an appointment online. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, provide solutions. And as you and I have talked about, somebody who may look at this Zoom call, they have parents that they're taking care of who don't have Medicare brokers. And unfortunately, that's the case in many cases. So I'd be happy to help.
Well, I appreciate you coming on this episode of Shane's Scoop and sharing with us. And if anyone has any questions and they post it on the social media site they're seeing this on, I'll be sure to relay that to you as well. And on the next episode of Shane's Scoop, we are going to be interviewing a local insurance broker for home, auto, things like that. I'm sure everyone's heard the California market is having issues with insurance companies leaving, premiums going up. So we're going to have some great times of question and answers for a local insurance agent who can tell us what's happening and what homeowners can do to keep their premiums down and hopefully still have coverage. So tune in for the next Shane Scoop, and thank you all for tuning in today.